It was supposed to be another uplifting segment about the wisdom of age. Ellen DeGeneres bounced through the audience with her trademark energy, microphone in hand, that infectious smile lighting up Studio 1A. She loved these moments, connecting with real people, hearing their stories, finding those nuggets of joy that made great television. But when she stopped in front of a distinguished 75-year-old man in the fourth row and asked him a simple question about happiness, she had no idea she was about to receive an answer that would shatter her carefully constructed world and force her to confront the most painful truth of her own life. Robert Hendricks sat quietly in his pressed khaki pants and navy cardigan, his silver hair combed neatly to the side. His hands, weathered from decades of carpentry work, rested gently in his lap. There was something peaceful about his presence, a kind of calm dignity that drew Ellen's attention immediately. Behind his wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes held depths of both sorrow and love that spoke of a life fully lived, fully felt.
"Hi there, handsome," Ellen said with her signature warmth, kneeling beside Robert's seat. "What's your name?"
"Robert Hendricks," he replied, his voice steady and kind, "but my friends call me Bob."
"Well, Bob, it's wonderful to meet you. Is this your first time at the show?"
Robert nodded, a gentle smile crossing his face. "Yes, my first and probably my last. I don't get out much anymore." Something in his tone made Ellen pause. There was no self-pity there, just a simple statement of fact that carried more weight than it should have. "Well, we're so glad you're here with us today. Bob, you've lived a lot of life. What would you say is your secret to happiness? What keeps you going?" It was meant to be an easy question, a setup for some folksy wisdom about family or faith or finding joy in simple pleasures. Ellen was already anticipating a heartwarming answer that would make the audience smile and maybe inspire a few people at home. Robert looked directly into Ellen's eyes, and for a moment, the studio noise seemed to fade. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute truth. "Talking to my wife every morning for 50 years, even though she can't talk back anymore." The words hit Ellen like a physical blow. Her smile didn't fade immediately. Her brain was still processing what she'd heard, still trying to understand why those words felt like they had reached inside her chest and squeezed her heart. "I'm sorry?" Ellen said softly, leaning closer. "What did you say?" Robert's eyes filled with tears, but his voice remained steady. "My wife, Dorothy. We've been married 52 years. Every morning I sit beside her bed and tell her about my day, about the weather, about how much I love her. I read her the newspaper, play her favorite songs, show her pictures of our grandchildren. She has Alzheimer's, you see. She doesn't know who I am anymore, hasn't for 3 years. But I talk to her anyway, because that's what love looks like." The silence that followed was unlike anything Ellen had experienced in her career. It wasn't the comfortable pause before a punchline or the dramatic beat before a reveal. This was the silence of recognition, of a truth so profound and devastating that it demanded space to exist. Ellen felt something crack inside her chest. Suddenly, she wasn't seeing a sweet elderly audience member. She was seeing devotion in its purest form, love that continued even when it wasn't recognized or returned. And in that moment, her own life came rushing back to her with painful clarity. "Bob," Ellen whispered, her voice already thick with emotion, "how do you do it? How do you keep talking when she can't respond?" Robert wiped his eyes with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. "Because love isn't about getting something back, Ellen. It's about giving something that matters. Every morning when I tell Dorothy I love her, I'm not doing it for her memory. I'm doing it for our love story. And that story doesn't end just because one of us can't remember how it started." The cameras captured every moment, Ellen's face cycling through emotions, the audience members around Robert wiping away tears, the moment when entertainment became something sacred. Ellen felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crumble. "Bob, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. 50 years of talking to someone, every single day?" 52 years come next month, Robert said with a proud smile. "We've never gone a day without saying good morning to each other. Even when I was deployed in Vietnam, I'd write her letters that started with 'Good morning, beautiful.' When she was in the hospital having our children, when I was traveling for work, when we had our worst fights, we always found a way to say good morning." Ellen's eyes filled with tears. Something about Robert's unwavering devotion was illuminating the gaps in her own life with painful clarity. When had she last had a real conversation with her father? When had she last called just to say she loved him? "And you still do this every morning?" Ellen asked, her voice barely audible. "Every morning at 7:30 sharp, I make her coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, just like she's always liked it. I sit in the blue chair beside her bed, The one she picked out when we moved her to the memory care facility. And I tell her about everything. About how the roses in our garden are blooming. About our grandson's baseball games. About how much I miss her laugh. Ellen felt a tear roll down her cheek. The audience around them was completely silent, hanging on every word. Even the crew members, who had seen thousands of emotional moments, were visibly moved. "Does she ever?" Ellen started, then stopped, unsure how to ask. "Respond? Sometimes she looks at me like she's trying to remember something important. Sometimes she smiles. Last week she reached out and touched my hand, and for just a moment I thought maybe, but then the moment passed. It doesn't matter though. I'm not talking to the disease. I'm talking to Dorothy, to the woman who made me coffee every morning for 49 years, who raised our children, who danced with me in our kitchen when she thought no one was watching." Ellen completely lost her composure. The tears came freely now, and she made no attempt to stop them. Something about Robert's love story was forcing her to confront her own relationship with time, with the people she loved, with all the conversations she'd been putting off. "Bob," Ellen said, standing up abruptly, "I need to tell you something, and I need everyone here to hear this." Ellen walked to the center of the stage area, addressing not just Robert, but the entire studio. Her voice carried across the space with an urgency that surprised even her longtime crew members. "This morning my father called me. He's 83 years old, and he called to see how I was doing, maybe to talk about, I don't know, life, family, things we should have talked about years ago. And you know what I did? I told my assistant to tell him I was too busy for a 10-minute conversation with my father." The studio was completely silent. Ellen's vulnerability was palpable, her usual polished delivery replaced by raw honesty. "I've been too busy for a lot of conversations lately. Too busy to call my mom just to say hi. Too busy to check on friends who are going through hard times. Too busy to be present for the people who matter most because I'm always focused on the next show, the next interview, the next thing." Ellen walked back to Robert, who was watching her with kind, understanding eyes. "Bob, you just taught me something that I desperately needed to learn. You showed me what commitment looks like, what love looks like when it's tested by the worst circumstances life can throw at it. And you made me realize that I'm wasting time I can never get back." Ellen reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The audience watched in amazement as she, without any warning to producers or crew, made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to do something I've never done in 15 years of television," Ellen announced. "I'm going to call my father, right now, on the air, because Bob just reminded me that some conversations can't wait." The audio was patched through the studio speakers as Ellen's fingers trembled slightly while dialing. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then, "Hello?" Ellen's voice caught slightly. "Dad, it's Ellen." "Ellen, honey, I'm so surprised. I thought you were busy today." The pain in Ellen's father's voice was evident to everyone listening. He was surprised because his daughter never called him anymore. "I was, Dad. I was too busy for the most important call of my day. Dad, I'm calling because I love you, and because I'm tired of being too busy for the people who matter most." There was a pause on the other end, and then, "Oh, honey. Dad, I'm here at the show right now, and I just met a man who talks to his wife every morning even though she can't talk back because of Alzheimer's. And it made me realize that I've been taking for granted that you'll always be there when I finally have time. But time doesn't wait, does it?" "No, sweetheart, it doesn't." Ellen's father's voice was thick with emotion now. "I've been wanting to talk to you about so many things, about how proud I am of you, about how much your mother and I love watching you make people happy every day." Ellen was crying openly now, and so was Robert, and so was most of the studio audience. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a daughter reconnecting with her father in real time, in front of millions of people. "Dad, I want to change that. I want to call you every morning. I want to know how you're doing, what you're thinking about, what makes you happy. I want to stop being too busy for love." "I would like that so much, Ellen, more than you know." Ellen looked at Robert, who was smiling through his tears. "Dad, I'm here with a man named Bob who just taught me that love means showing up every day, even when it's hard, even when you don't get anything back, and I realize I haven't been showing up for you. You've always made me proud, honey, but yes, I'd love to hear your voice more often." Ellen took a deep breath. "Then it's a promise. Every morning, just like Bob and Dorothy. 7:30. "I'll be waiting by the phone," her father said, and Ellen could hear the smile in his voice. As Ellen ended the call, the studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't the usual television applause. It was the sound of people recognizing something sacred, something real in a world often filled with superficial connections. Ellen walked back to Robert, and without hesitation sat down right there on the studio floor beside his chair, not caring about her designer dress or the cameras or anything except honoring this man who had just changed her life. "Bob, I don't know how to thank you. You just saved my relationship with my father. You reminded me what really matters." Robert reached down and patted Ellen's hand gently. That's what Dorothy would have wanted. She always said that love shared is love multiplied. Ellen looked up at this remarkable man who had just given her the greatest gift imaginable, perspective. "Tell me more about Dorothy. I want everyone to know who she was before the disease." Robert's face lit up with a joy that transformed him completely. She was a teacher, 2nd grade. 43 years of shaping young minds. She had this laugh that could fill a room, and she made the best chocolate chip cookies in 3 counties. She gardened like she was painting masterpieces, and she never forgot a birthday or an anniversary. She wrote me love notes and hid them in my lunchbox even after we'd been married 30 years. She sounds incredible. She was everything good in this world, Robert said simply. And even though she doesn't remember our wedding day or our children's names or the house we built together, she's still everything good in this world. Love doesn't require memory, Ellen. It just requires commitment. Ellen stood up and addressed the entire studio once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet the most inspiring man I've ever had the honor to know. Bob Hendricks has been married for 52 years, and he's going to teach all of us what real love looks like." The audience rose to their feet in spontaneous applause, and Ellen made another unprecedented decision. She removed her jacket, the designer blazer she wore for every taping, and draped it around Robert's shoulders. "Bob, this jacket has been with me for every show I've done this season. It's been part of celebrations and surprises and moments of joy, but today it's going home with someone who taught me what joy really means. It means choosing love every single day, especially when it's hard." Robert wore Ellen's jacket like a badge of honor, and Ellen could see that for the first time in years, he felt truly seen, truly valued. "Bob, I want you to do me a favor. Tomorrow morning, when you sit down with Dorothy and tell her good morning, I want you to tell her that Ellen DeGeneres said she's lucky to have been loved by someone like you." "I will," Bob promised. "And Ellen, when you call your father tomorrow morning, you tell him that Bob Hendricks said he raised a daughter who knows how to love." As the cameras stopped rolling and the audience began to file out, Ellen didn't immediately return to her dressing room. She sat with Bob for another 20 minutes, listening to more stories about Dorothy, about their life together, about the power of showing up for someone even when they can't show up for you. The episode, when it aired 2 weeks later, became one of the most watched in Ellen's history. But more importantly, it sparked a movement. Morning conversations began trending on social media as people shared videos of themselves calling elderly relatives, visiting nursing homes, reconnecting with estranged family members. Ellen kept her promise. Every morning at 7:30 sharp, she called her father. They talked about everything and nothing: the weather, current events, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Her father passed away peacefully 18 months later, and at his funeral, Ellen spoke about the gift Bob Hendricks had given them both, the reminder that love is a conversation that should never end. Bob continued his morning routine with Dorothy until she passed away in her sleep on a Tuesday morning in spring. Ellen attended the funeral, where she learned that Bob had been telling Dorothy about their meeting every single day, reading her articles about the show's impact, sharing photos that viewers had sent of their own morning conversations with loved ones. In his eulogy, Bob said, "Dorothy may not have remembered our first date or our wedding day, but love isn't about memory, it's about choice. And every morning for 54 years, I chose to love her. That was the easiest choice I ever made." Ellen's morning conversations with her father became the foundation for a new perspective on life, on work, on what really mattered. She reduced her show's taping schedule to create more time for family, started a foundation supporting Alzheimer's research, and never again let business interfere with love. The jacket she gave Bob was returned to her by his daughter after his funeral, along with a note, "Dad wanted you to have this back. He said it carried the love of everyone who watched that day, and love like that should keep traveling, keep inspiring, keep reminding people what really matters." Ellen kept the jacket framed in her office, along with a photo of Bob and Dorothy from their wedding day. Young, radiant, full of dreams for a future they couldn't imagine. But perhaps more meaningful was the small card beside it, written in Bob's careful handwriting. "Love isn't about getting something back, it's about giving something that matters." Because sometimes a 75-year-old man talking about his morning ritual can change everything, can save relationships, restore priorities, and remind us all that the most important conversations are the ones that happen every day, especially when we think we don't have time for them. The greatest gift isn't time, it's choosing to use that time to love someone completely, consistently, and without conditions, even when they can't love us back, especially when they can't love us back.